It's a short story of Alice in Wonderland. Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting on the bank and of having nothing to do. Once or twice she had peeked into the book, but it had no pictures or conversations in it. And what is the use of a book? Thought Alice. Without pictures or conversations, suddenly, a white rabbit with pink eyes ran close by her. Alice was excited by his bright waistcoat, watch, and hat. These curiosities were exactly what Alice followed the rabbit into the rabbit hole and found herself falling down what seemed to be a very deep well. She had plenty of time as she went down to look about her. The sides of the well were filled with cupboards and bookshelves. Here and there, she saw maps and pictures hung upon pegs. She took down a jar from one of the shelves as she passed. It was labeled orange marmalade. But to her great disappointment, it was empty. After a long and uneventful fall, she finally landed in a hall with numerous mysterious doors. However, all of them were locked. That's no fun at all. Luckily, she came upon a tiny golden key lying on a little table made of solid glass. Lady only fitted a little door, hidden behind a low curtain. The door was so small that Alice could not even get her head through. And even if my head would go through, thought poor Alice, it would be of very little use without my shoulders. What a pity. Alice could see the loveliest garden behind the door, where she longed to roam. Alice got up and went back to the table. She found a little bottle on it, which certainly was not there before. The paper label on the bottle said "Drink me." Alice ventured to taste it, and finding it very nice, it had a sort of mixed flavor of cherry tart and roast turkey. She very soon finished it off. What a curious feeling, said Alice. Must be shutting up like a telescope. And so it was indeed. She was now only 10 inches high, and was now small enough to fit through the little door into that lovely garden. But alas, poor Alice forgot the little golden key, and when she went back to the table for it, she found she could not possibly reach it when she had tired herself out with trying. The poor little thing sat down and cried. Come, there's no use in crying like that, said Alice to herself, rather sharply. I advise you to leave off this minute. She generally gave herself very good advice, though she very seldom followed it. I need to grow larger, thought Alice. Desire can be an interesting thing. Sometimes you get what you wish for. Suddenly, Alice saw a very small cake, on which were the words "Eat me." Alice did not hesitate. She ate a little bit, and said anxiously to herself, which way, holding her hand on the top of her head, to feel which way it was growing. And she was quite surprised to find that she remained the same size. To be sure, this is what generally happens when one eats cake. She very soon finished off the cake, and at that moment her head struck against the roof of the hall. Ouch! Alice started to cry, shedding gallons of tears, until there was a large pool all round her. Once again, she got distracted by the white rabbit, who was in a great hurry and dropped his fan, just what Alice needed. Fanning herself, Alice started to shrink rapidly and eventually found herself up to her neck in salty water. The sea? No, it was merely a puddle of her own tears. The current carried her to a clearing full of mushrooms. A blue caterpillar was sitting on the top of a mushroom, quietly smoking a long hookah. Alice complained about her endless adventure with her changing height, but the caterpillar looked rather unimpressed and said, "Just eat the mushroom. One side will make you grow taller, and the other side will make you grow shorter." The mushroom was perfectly round. Which were the two sides? Regardless, Alice took a nibble and, finally, got back to normal size. Alice went deeper into the wood and saw the Cheshire Cat sitting on a bough of a tree. The cat only grinned when it saw Alice. It looked good-natured, she thought. Still, it had very long claws and a great many teeth, so she felt it ought to be treated with respect. Cheshire Puss, would you tell me, please, which way I ought to walk from here? That depends a good deal on where. That depends a good deal on where you want to get to, said the cat. Don't much care where so long as I'll get somewhere, said Alice. Then it doesn't matter which way you walk, said the cat and vanished, his grin remaining some time after the rest of it had gone. Following the cat's advice, Alice kept on walking. Soon, she came to a table set out under a tree in front of the house, and the March Hare and the Hatter were having tea at it. A dormouse was sitting between them, fast asleep, and the other two were using it as a cushion, resting their elbows on it. Alice was not invited to take a seat at the table full of unwashed dishes, nor was she offered any tea. However, she was offered some wine. When it turned out that there was no wine, Alice said, "Then it wasn't very civil of you to offer it. Lady, wasn't he very civil of you to sit down without being invited?" said the March Hare. This rudeness was more than Alice could bear. She got up and walked off. Neither of the others took the least notice of her going, though she looked back once or twice, half hoping that they would call after her. She then noticed that one of the trees had a door, and in she went. Once more she saw the little glass table. "Now, I'll manage better this time," she said to herself. Then, she found herself at last in the beautiful garden, where 3 gardeners were painting white roses red, as it was the Queen's favorite color. Soon, the Queen of Hearts, the royal family, and their guests appeared. The Queen was in the mood to lop off someone's head, but Alice was not scared. Alice was excited to play croquet with the Queen, a game that had no rules at all. The croquet balls were live hedgehogs, and the mallets lived flamingos. In the meantime, the Queen kept ordering off with their head at whoever she felt like, including the Duchess, the Cheshire Cat, her gardeners, and other players. But the king forgave everyone, and no one was executed. Eventually, the queen ordered the griffin to take Alice to see the mock turtle and to hear his story. When we were little, the mock turtle said, we went to school in the sea. We studied reeling and rising, mystery, ancient and modern, was geography. Suddenly, The griffin took Alice by her hand and hurried off. Alice found herself in court, the knave having presumably stolen some cards and been put on trial. The judge was a king, and all the creatures Alice had met on her way were there. The evidence given by the witnesses was so confusing that it was impossible to deliver a verdict. "Stuff and nonsense," said Alice loudly. "Off with her head." The queen shouted at the top of her voice. "Who cares for you?" said Alice. "You're nothing but a pack of cards." At this the whole pack rose up into the air and came flying down upon her. She gave a little scream and tried to beat them off, and found herself lying on the bank, with her head in the lap of her sister, who was gently brushing some dead leaves off Alice's face. Alice didn't want to open her eyes, for then the Wonderland would disappear, and everything around her would become familiar and mundane again. The end. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Color Spectrum Soul.